almost 30 years ago. Why this meeting? And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in depth, but it's been a passion of mine personally as just a contractor for a number of years to be able to control costs looking ahead, and you're setting budgets on a yearly basis. How do you know what the price of gas or diesel is going to be? And so I've done a lot of study and thinking on it, and finally decided someone has to grab the bull by the horns here and pull together a group of people that could make something happen in our region. So it's partly a self-serving thing of looking at controlling our own costs in our own business, but also partly the whole concept of raising the region up together. If you look at how much money that we're spending for gasoline and diesel every day, if you could keep some of that in the community, wouldn't that be a good thing for the region? So that's another passion of mine. And the other passions, we're going to cover this more in depth in the slide presentations by myself and the distinguished panel that's here, but is the whole geopolitical aspect of things. If you look at how much money we're sending overseas that could stay on American soil, wouldn't that be a good thing? And also the environment. Compressed natural gas burns a lot cleaner than gasoline or diesel typically does. Finally, and not least, with the regional shot in the arm, you'd also obviously have the jobs that would and could be created by putting together the infrastructure there. Now, historically, it's been a chicken and egg question. You've got the whole thing of which is first, supply or demand. Suppliers aren't going to put a compressed natural gas station in unless there's cars that pull up to the pump. That would be kind of a crazy thing. People aren't going to convert vehicles unless there's a place to pull up to the pump. So that's why we've got fleet owners here today. We've got a whole lot of different people that make both sides of that chicken and egg question. Hopefully out of this we'll get chicken egg omelet. Now, I've never had that, but I'm assuming that it's better than the alternative of going on with the status quo. Corey, do you want to, you still want to have everyone go around? We had talked about having everyone give a very brief why they're here, 10 to 30 seconds, otherwise we're going to end up taking forever. But no? Okay, that's fine. It was outvoted by a couple of loud voices, so I'm good with that. You are a very diverse group, I will tell you that. Okay, up with the slide, I guess, in that case. Am I on target here? Yes, I am. Hopefully I'll figure out how to run this clicker, and I tend not to be tethered to a lectern very well, so I'll do my best. And this is a new theater. It's not without its glitches. I've got the same presentation on my laptop, but it's not hooked up to what's up there. So I've either got to hit the button twice to look ahead, or I've got to look up there. And I think I'm going to look up there because, and I should actually introduce my panel, for the panel that's assembled here first, before I get on with this. And they'll likely be doing the same thing because they don't have their laptop here. So we're going to be a little bit discombobulated with regards to the state-of-the-art stuff that we have. We have Mark Radtke from Integrys Energy Group is here. Integrys Energy Group he'll explain this a little bit more, but they own WPS, Wisconsin Public Service. Next to him is Dave Shigoda. He is with We Energies, and he'll have another short presentation. Then we have Laura Richard with us, and she is with Wisconsin Clean Cities. And last but not least is the guy with the money, David Jenkins from the Office of Energy Independence. And I think he's going to throw something at me for having said that. So we do want to keep this as interactive as possible. Please feel free to chime in. At some point along the way, we will definitely open it up for questions, and you'll have a chance to ask questions. Hopefully there will be a lot of them. If you don't have them, I'll try to seed the panel with questions that I've put together that may or may not be of interest. Any questions before we start? We didn't do the introduction piece, so I feel compelled to open it up for just a quick comment from anyone. Okay, let's move on ahead. What is compressed natural gas? It's a readily available alternative to gasoline. And this is a pretty cool old picture from, I don't know, the 1930s, I think. It is a big old bladder on the back of a trailer behind an old car. Now, that would be one way to take it around, but if you think about natural gas, it comes out fairly non-compressed, and you'd have to tow around a bus if you wanted to fuel a modern vehicle. So you compress it down to 1% of its volume at standard atmospheric pressures. Now, understand in third world countries, Pakistan, for instance, you'll still see on occasion a bladder on the roof of a car that they just expand with natural gas, and as it deflates, they've got an automatic gas gauge to tell them how much gas is in it. But that's also why when you read CNG horror stories, you have a lot of explosions in those countries, because as you could imagine, you would have kind of a ticking time bomb. We'll talk a little bit more about safety later on. Compressed natural gas consists of methane. It's colorless, it's odorless, it's tasteless. It is, get the right button going here. It's drawn from domestically drilled gas wells, and it's either done as a standalone or in conjunction with crude oil production. But don't forget the domestically drilled. That's one of my passions, and I'm assuming one of yours, that this is an American fuel. Now, there are about 12 million vehicles running around on the face of the earth today. Unfortunately, there's only like 110,000 in the United States. So we've got a long way to go. And if you look at the headlines, these are all headlines from this past weekend. I set my Google alerts to CNG just to see what would come up. And you literally have tons of them. I'm not going to read them all. But Indiana Dairy Fueling Fleet has renewable natural gas. Arizona distributor does what they do. Natural gas can drive our economy. That's a statement, not necessarily a headline of somebody doing something. Unfortunately, a lot of these are overseas. This one in India, gasoline vehicle is soon to be overtaken by CNG, and that's in India. Another one from India. Waste Management in Columbus is going to convert their fleet to CNG, and I believe we have someone here from Waste Management, at least if they were able to make it. A city fleet being replaced. CNG stations in your garage. Again, those kind of things are possible. Hertz is putting on-demand compressed natural gas vehicles on in the Oklahoma State University. Pike Research predicts a 68% jump in global CNG vehicle sales by 2016. The worldwide growth rate is about 31%. U.S. growth rate by comparison is about 4%. There are 12,000 fueling stations around on the planet today, and only 1,200 plus or minus are located in the United States. So we do truly have a long way to go. And this, just by way of interest, is actually a car I purchased for my daughter in Richmond, Virginia, and drove it back, and this is me fueling up at a fueling station in Indianapolis. What I really like about this is check out the price of that gas. This was a picture I took a week and a half ago in Tulsa, 78 cents a gallon. You can't quite fill up that inexpensively around here, and certainly if you're a fleet person that's putting in a station, public access for others to come by, you could never put it in at this cost, so don't get carried away with the cost. But the savings over gasoline is substantial. I always like it when the dollars are lower than the gallons. That's kind of cool, isn't it? Makes you feel like you're back in 1982. Costs 50 to 70% less than gasoline or diesel, as we said, and it also produces less emissions, so it's an environmentally friendly fuel. Question is always, is it safe? It has a narrow flammability range, not going to get into the science of this, but 5 to 15% as a volume of air. You need to have that. If it's less than that, it won't explode. If it's more than that, you could literally fill this room up with natural gas, fill it up, and bring a lighter in here. I recommend not doing it, but it would not explode because it is too saturated with methane. It's lighter than air, so you don't have the pooling issues that you do with a liquid like gasoline or diesel, or a vapor like you would with liquid petroleum propane. CNG is primarily methane, so it's non-toxic. It doesn't pose a threat to land or water. It's non-toxic. Strict standards are in place, and when they're properly installed, vehicles and filling stations are very safe. And if there's a YouTube video that's kind of cool. I'm not going to show you all 9 minutes of it because we'd all be glazed over. But if we can spool a minute or two of that in the control room. They're
Without creating serious hazards. Dropped from 30 feet, this 1966 Pontiac was moving at approximately 30 miles per hour at the point of impact. That is the maximum speed at which new car makers are required to test the integrity of conventional gasoline tanks. The CNG cylinder, pressurized to a standard 3,000 psi and mounted in the trunk of the car, withstood the rear-end crash with no meaningful damage or dislocation. Fuel lines to the engine were kinked, but showed no damage. Subsequently, the same cylinder withstood pressurization to 7,500 psi, the minimum burst pressure required by federal and Canadian government authorities, showing that the tank had maintained its integral strength despite the crash. In each of these tests, the natural gas cylinders were fitted with standard CNG cylinder brackets.
This YouTube video goes on to put it into a bonfire and light it on fire and shoot a gun at it and do all kinds of things. It's 9 minutes if you want to look it up yourself, just to be assured that we're not talking about traveling time bombs. In fact, the vehicle that you drove in on, unless it was an all-electric vehicle, is likely much less safe than CNG is. It's not something new on the planet either. It really dates back to at least World War II, as you saw that old picture with the trailer on it. And their proven technology and enhancements and refinements have made it really a convenient, inexpensive, safe motor fuel. Something else I was going to say on that, and I don't recall it, so let's move ahead. Of course, you have the whole hydraulic fracturing, the fracking debate. We're not going to get into that. I think one of the other gentlemen on the panel has got a couple of slides that may work with that. One of the things that is of interest to me is that the sand for the fracking is mined locally, so that's also good for the region here. And obviously you have farms and landfills that are burning off natural gas. And I believe we have someone very likely in the audience that can talk to that just a bit. These are some of the sample savings. And again, you can easily do the math here. And this is not a return on investment calculation per se, because we don't know what it costs to convert. We do know, but that's not part of this equation because there are a lot of variables there. But if you have a vehicle that you're driving 20,000 miles a year that gets 5 miles to the gallon, like a bus or garbage or something of that sort, if you're paying $1.50 for CNG, GGE, or gallon of gas equivalent, compared to $3.70 a gallon, you're $8,800. You can run the math on this. I'm certainly not going to bore you with this, but if you have one that gets 10 miles to the gallon, again, just figure out how many miles we are driving, what our miles to the gallon is, and out the other end comes the number that can be saved. And that's really what spurred me to thinking is my own personal truck. I put 45,000 miles a year on, and it gets about 15 miles to the gallon. I'm talking substantial savings every year that I can then put back into hiring employees, back into the economy, the local, the local world here. Okay, and then you have 20 miles to the gallon. There's a point, of course, if you don't drive your vehicle very far and it's got excellent gas mileage, it really doesn't make sense, but fleets certainly can make a lot of sense. Return on investment is excellent. We had talked about that. Reduced cost, we've talked about most of this, making central Wisconsin a more competitive in national and global environments and markets, and making your business or municipality more sustainable in an era of tight budgets. And again, that was my initial passion that drove me to this. We'd mentioned creating jobs. Geopolitical implications. Again, not going to affirm what you're seeing up on the screen as I do. Keep Wisconsin air and water clean. It gives you cleaner, quieter vehicles. And the bottom line for a lot of consumers is that it saves money and the ability to predict costs. And it's not by mistake that that slide is painted up like Christmas, because I think that there is a sense in which if we embrace this, we will literally all have more money in our pockets to spend for other things if, again, an initiative of this sort is taken and things go forward.